Well, welcome to the journey. I have Steve Summers from 95.3 The Bull, a local radio station in the Rockford area. And welcome to the journey. And I know just recently, Steve, we had an opportunity. You had me on The Bull, and you were asking me about the holiday season and how that may impact our mental health and depression and grieving, and if there's some losses, and then how that's been complicated with the pandemic this year, with COVID this year. But I wanted to continue our conversation and welcome to the journey, Steve.
Oh, it's great to be here, Kevin. And as always, you were very gracious in accepting my invitation. So when you extended an invitation my way, I was more than happy to be a part of the show. And anytime that we can help someone by just conversation, that's a win-win in everybody's book.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that's what we talk a lot of time. We just never know who might be listening, and we never know what someone needs to hear. And if there could be something, just even one little thing that gives somebody some possible direction or hope, or even if nothing else, I can relate to that. Then I think we've
Sure.
done our job.
And probably more now so this time of year than any time of the year because the holidays bring back so many memories of joy and fun. And then here we are in a COVID world where we're getting told we can't do some of the things we were told to do. And we kind of feel like we're at adolescent stage once again, where somebody's controlling us. And wait a minute, I want to make my own decisions.
Yeah.
And we get kind of frustrated. So I think that's why this conversation is so important to have.
Yeah, yeah. Well, before we jump into that, and I'm curious just myself. And uh, how long have you been doing radio, and
Wow.
how long have you been in the communication field?
Well, it's a great question. Here we are in the 95.3 Bull Studios. This is where I'm at every morning now. I started in radio back in 1982 as a part time overnight, midnight to 6 a.m. kind of a shift on weekends only. And then I worked my way in after going through college. I, uh, I wanted to get into theater, and acting was kind of my first love and passion after construction. Once I went into a couple acting classes, and I was told to be a tomato today, and tomorrow you're going to be a tree. I realized that maybe I wasn't going to make a good living doing the acting thing. It wasn't just quite my calling. It was close, but not what I wanted.
Sure.
But being in show business and being able to communicate and express myself and talk with people, I think that's what led me to radio. So when I got into college, University of Wisconsin Whitewater, I walked right into the college campus radio station the first day and got myself an air shift and a job, and fell in love with it. A couple of years later, while still going to college, I was invited to come to Rockford on a blind date, which I did.
Okay.
And that blind date turned out to be my wife.
Mhm.
And when I was in town, I heard of an opening across town at 97 ZOK back in 1982, applied for it, and I've been doing radio in Rockford for 38 ish years so
Yeah,
far. So,
sure, sure. So I could go a thousand different places, and with that, well, and my daughter and wife, my daughter specifically, started in the performing arts, started being in musicals and plays when she was 8 years old. She's 22 now, and then my wife got very much involved, working behind the scenes. Her background as an artist, and so I enjoy and appreciate. All forms of the arts, but specifically the stage, regarding what can be. There's something about live theater and not plays as well as musicals that is such a rich experience, that different than a film, different than, and having been that, I wouldn't necessarily call myself a theater dad, but that dad who would, if there was 8 productions in a weekend, I probably sat through 6 of the 8 productions, and
yeah.
none of them were actually ever the same, that. And I think that's the beauty of live theater, is that it changes from, in this case, most of the community theater was from Thursday night to the Sunday's production. You could see the a development and evolution of the actors, as well as the production itself.
A lot of it's the improv because you're on the edge. You never know what's going to happen. And if it does go wrong, the goal is to make sure that nobody knows it went wrong. So
Yeah.
you try to make it all seem like it's jiving. And that's the edge of live radio. That's the edge of live theater versus a movie or a TV show where it's cut. We got to do that over. It wasn't right.
Yep.
And to this day, and nothing against our TV broadcast journalists in town or anyone who does, recordings or camera work. There's a difference between radio personalities and camera personalities because we kind of live on the edge and we could do it in one take. We just do it.
Yep.
TV people sometimes need prompters and to clarify and get all their thoughts written out before they actually read them and express them. So that's the big difference between the mediums in
Yeah.
town
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
anywhere, really.
Yeah, and it's so interesting you say that because having been a therapist for 30 years in the counseling field for 30 years, the couple times when I've had to do either a commercial or a short film or something like that, and they had a teleprompter, I got
Mhm.
nervous. But if I could just have an outline of what I'm going to talk about, or just have a conversation, I do much better, and it seems to flow much better. So
Yeah.
it's interesting. I've never really thought of it, the difference with that. Well, let me ask you, how would you say in the 38 years that you've been on the radio, how have you noticed? What are some of the big changes that you've noticed as technology's changed, as um, yeah, just as time has gone on? What have you
Yeah.
noticed?
Well, in this industry, I think even in television too now, we can do a lot of things with just our phones now. I can record clients, I can take snapshots and videos. And I know like a lot of TV personalities are doing their shows from home because of COVID-19. A lot of them are doing it on their phone. So there's a big difference there, where in the old days you had to have antennas and wires and extreme setups. Now it's just like this on a laptop computer. And here I am. I could have taken the shot anywhere. But since I was in the studio, I thought, well, we'll just have our conversation here. The technology has changed so much where we had actual albums when I started with
Hmm.
a needle, and all the commercials were on what looked like an 8 track, which we called a cart. And we had machines, we had to keep loading these machines in all the time. And there had to be somebody there 24/7 because if there was no one there, nothing got done. Station never ran. Now it's all computerized. We program our computers, we can voice track our shows, we can install conversations and put them in days, weeks, months, even years before, and have them ready to play by time codes. So everything's different now because of the technology. But the one thing that has never changed and probably will never change is the one to one communication that radio has with the listeners. When you're turning on your radio, be it in your car or at home, even if it's recorded, it's all about a connection, and that will never change. And I think that's even with television. It's that connection between the viewer and those at home watching the news or watching that program. It's that connection which will never be able to be changed.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think, and I think that's 100% spot on, because very similar to, uh, this podcast, this format. If you listen to someone on a regular basis, similar to listen to a particular show or a particular time period on the radio, it's as if that person, and you're on receiving content, receiving. It's almost like a conversation, but it's one way. So
Right.
yeah,
Right. And I
very much.
think a lot of people call it like habit forming. And it's kind of like everything's good in the world if I'm on the morning show and you wake up and I'm there in the morning. If I'm on vacation, everything seems a little kittywampus for you. It's like, well, my morning didn't start off quite the way I'd liked it to, or remember it always being, well, maybe I was on vacation, or maybe you didn't get that sense of comfort, that sense of all is good in the world because it seems normal. And that's where 2020 has been such a jagged year for so many people, is our normalcy, our blanket, our, you know, feeling of everything is good in the world got ripped out from underneath us, and it's not the same. So that's why it's very awkward for a lot of people in 2020 to try to, get through work, get through the families, see their loved ones, because we can't.
Yeah. Well, and I think that is a great segue into, kind of what we wanted to talk about today, was this idea that even though the COVID-19 has come in, and the response to COVID-19, and trying to help us stay safe, and minimize the impact of that, uh, November still came. The holidays still happen. December, and all the different holidays that happen in December, and the activities may not be happening the same way, but those 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 dates are still here, and that has really been a big struggle. What are some of the things that you've seen or just observed, as maybe even from from like Halloween, post Halloween, as we've gone into Thanksgiving, and now that we're in December, what are some things that you've observed, you've experienced?
Well, obviously, we don't have the company Christmas parties, and we don't have all the get-togethers that we've normally had. But the one thing that I find in my life a lot of normalcy is I'm a Griswold at my house. I put up so many Christmas trees. My wife loves a light, so I spoil her and I put up a zillions of lights. It's not quite the Janesville Rotary Botanical Gardens kind of a setup, but it's very similar. Lights everywhere. And for me, that gives me pleasure to give somebody joy by putting up lights and putting up a lot of Christmas trees or decorations. So we did that this year, no matter what, because it was more of my gift to you is that, you know, we may be in a different world right now. It may be a different year, but hey, we have some great memories. We have a history together, and we celebrate that history even through the decorations, carving pumpkins, even as simple as decorating cookies. Even if you're by yourself or if you lost a loved one and maybe that was something that you did is made cookies together and you decorated them. I find it very comforting to do it again in their honor and in memory. And at the same time, it's like it's different, but it feels good remembering those good memories. And I think that gets a lot of people through these difficult times. December, the seasonal effect disorders coming up where there's less daylight. People are going to start feeling kind of gloomy and down. But you got to look at the positive. Do something that makes you feel good, that brings back great memories, because then you're going to go back to that time frame. And even if it's just for 5 minutes, even a minute, you felt good doing that. I think we can build on those little minutes instead of taking, as you've said many times, Kevin, the whole big picture, which is pretty daunting at times, where we're just kind of waiting here for a vaccine, waiting for a glimmer of hope or a light at the end of the tunnel. Make your own little lights here and there, and that'll help you through this dark period.
Yep, yep. No, I 100% agree with you. And my wife, with her, the artist within her is she, our house. I mean, I this year I think, and I noticed this in our neighborhoods too. I saw go. Christmas was emerging earlier this year than I think I've ever observed it before. And I think that may have, kind of going along with what you were saying, maybe, more people had time on their hands. Being at home was something that they could do. I know for me, walking the dog around the neighborhood, I've definitely appreciated that aspect. And watching my wife decorate the house, and doing the way that she has always done it, at the same time knowing that we're not going to have those gatherings at our house, the friend gatherings and those types of gatherings like we had in the past. She didn't say this, but for me, my observation was it's who she is.
Mhm.
I deeply appreciate it, and being able to enjoy it and savor those time periods. But that's who she is, and COVID can't change that. Or in her case, she's not going to let it change her.
Sure. Well, let me just turn that to you a little bit more so that you can help a lot of our viewers. Maybe I am suffering a little bit from depression right now because the holidays are here and maybe we lost a loved one. Are your recommendations the same thing, is to do those wonderful things, keep those memories alive, and but at the same time do it in their honor and remember those people?
Well, and Steve, here's the paradox, right? And I think we talk about it in specifically counseling someone who is grieving a loss, is that everyone grieves differently, and this is where sometimes there ends up being conflict between friends and family members because people are grieving differently, and they're at different areas of where they're grieving. So the paradox of that is that we have to kind of give ourselves permission on one hand, that if we don't feel like we can get, especially if we're in that critical first few months, first year of that significant loss, there may be time periods that we may not feel like getting out of bed. There may be time periods where we just don't feel like doing something. So on one hand, we need to be able to honor ourselves of maybe at least the possibility of doing it different at the same time, but am I also helping myself stay stuck? So it's this paradox of, on one hand, I need to honor myself, that I'm just not. don't have the energy at this moment. And on the other hand, maybe I also need a little bit of normalcy, a little bit of push, and the reason to do that so that I don't. I'm still going through the grieving process, still honoring that that honoring myself and the loss of that person not being there, but I maybe have to do it at a different pace at different times, and so um, it is that not one size fits all, um, but there is a template in which we can kind of navigate through. I think the biggest thing for me is being mindful of, am I going to set myself up for regret, which then
By
compounds the grief.
going too fast and not giving yourself time to do it when you think it's right, not because somebody else said, well, you should be decorating right now. You should put your tree up. You should put your lights up right
Yep.
now.
Yep.
Well, you know what? I'm not ready for that. And
Yep.
even if you don't do that this year, that's okay
Yep.
because that's your timeline. It's
Yep.
not what somebody else wants. And by all means, stay away from the Hallmark movies.
Yeah.
It's all fake. It's the same story told
Yep.
80 different
Yep.
times, and it
Yep.
was fake to begin with.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, and and that for some individuals, that watching the Hallmark movie because everything gets wrapped up in a nice little bow at the end of 90 minutes, right? And that could be either a loss of a loved one or a loss of a marriage or of a relationship. And those losses are equally difficult during this time period, or a loss of employment, or
yeah.
all those things are equally. And watching a Hallmark movie that gets everything wrapped up within 90 minutes or 2 hours, um, can have an opposite effect on us, right? Um, though I do think having, my Diane has, Hallmark playing all the time at my house, and if she, and then of course, how like certain movies you were talking about, Christmas Vacation is on the loop,
Yes,
um,
always.
and but sometimes if you get beyond, the glitz and all those types of things, sometimes there's a message in there about people, about forgiveness, and about coming together, and about the importance of family, and working through some of those differences for something greater than ourselves.
Well, you only have to watch the last minute of a Hallmark movie to hear all that because the
That
first hour and a half is all the setup for that 1 minute
it,
payoff. And more times than not, at the end of a Hallmark movie or any movie, that's why I'm not a big movie person because
yeah,
I'm like, gosh, I just wasted 2 hours of my life watching that movie. And I
yeah,
knew it was going to end that way,
yeah.
but I did it anyhow because it got sucked into it.
Yep,
So,
yep, yep. And I think to me, appreciating film, meaning movies, and now we have Netflix series, which is just a movie, expanded, over multiple episodes. Um, it's really reminds me, and I talk about this in some of my presentations, is about the idea of the journey of the hero or the heroine in the story, even though it's pretty predictable in Hallmark movies what exactly is going to happen at the end. um, but but that journey is really what we may be able to learn from, right? And that's kind of like going through this time period, of 2020, and specifically this leg of the journey, going through the holidays. How am I? These are the challenges. These are the obstacles that are in front of us right now. It could be a loss of someone. It could be a loss of someone on top of the seasonal affect disorder that reoccurs with a person every year, and now I don't even have the normal distractions that I would have had last year with the busyness of going to a company, Christmas party, or whatever it might
sure.
be. And how am I going to navigate through this? Because on one hand, I may have to say, I'm not ready to put up a Christmas tree. And then how am I going to feel on December 27th if I didn't put up the Christmas tree?
Good
Am I,
point. Good
am
point.
I going to beat myself up because I didn't do it? Or once again, I something I can't change because it's already passed. So I encourage people to say, I know right now you don't want to put up a Christmas tree. I get it, totally get it. You don't want to put any, do any decoration. Totally get it. can you at least do me a favor? If you decide to change your mind, it's okay.
Yeah, you could do it any time of the year. It doesn't have to be on a specific day. If you wanted to do it on January 1st because you wanted to have a moment, you could still do that because it's okay because it's your timeline, right?
Yeah, exactly. And you probably get Christmas decorations cheaper. And so,
So my question to you then, with 2020 coming to a close and as we get into a new year of 2021, uh, one thing that I'm going to take away from 2020 is the appreciation of what not only Christmas, but all the other holidays, but every single day is the camaraderie, the conversations that I have. I'm going to appreciate a hug. I'm a hugger, I'm a handshaker. So the last 8, 9 months, I've been going through a little withdrawals and at the same time feeling kind of lonely and that isolation a little bit. When that all comes back, I'm going to appreciate it even more than I did the first time around. I think that's something we all could probably take away from 2020 as we go into the new year, correct?
Absolutely, and it's interesting you bring that up, Steve. Is that even in the Rockford area, we went through the first wave of quarantining, and then we were in over the summer we were in phase four, which meant maybe not the hugging as much or the handshaking, but we could go to restaurants and eat outside and doing certain things. And I think, at least for myself, I think that in my mind, I just kind of transitioned to that, and I don't think I savored it as much as I think I'm going to in the future, because then when it started getting taken away again, I'm like,
Mhm.
I really wish I would have really appreciated being able to go to blank restaurant or go and do certain thing. It was almost like, okay, that I was grounded for a little bit, and then I was released from my grounding, and I just got back to normal um, during the summer months, and then when it got taken away again, the freedom to be able to go there, I know that I didn't appreciate as much as I could have, and that, like you said, I want to be much more intentional about appreciating it and savoring that, and not falling in the trap of taking it for granted.
Right. I think this big pause for the globe is probably a good thing too, because a lot of Generation Zs and Generation Xers, everything is instantaneous. They've never had to wait for anything. So I think we all maybe learned the term wait and see and just not to take everything for granted. So that could be another good thing to come out of 2020. I know a lot
Yep,
of people lost a lot of loved ones, and I'm not trying to take that back or minimize that in any
yep,
way, but maybe we all learned something about, you know what, we don't need the technology as much and we do need that connection with people, and it's maybe we're just falling into that whole time warp of technology and that's our best friend. And well, you know what, that may have been an opening now for us. The technology has given us a door to communicate a little bit more, but what are you communicating with? Well, who are you communicating with? And that kind of stuff. So I think maybe that's a good thing for us to take away, as well as that pause. Maybe it gave us a chance to think about the bigger picture.
yeah. Well, I remember, and I imagine you remember this too. In the end of the '90s and the beginning of the 2000s, there was this huge piece. If you're doing things on, this whole thing that was coming on about the internet, and if you're incorporating the internet into your business and using computers in your business, then somehow that was going to immediately project your business to that next elite level.
Right.
And as if the internet or technology, computers, were the answer in itself. And I remember during that time period hearing some people, in the midst of all the noise about that, saying, but maybe it's just a tool. Maybe the internet's just a tool. It's not the answer. And now, of course, in 2020, we know that the internet and technology and all that is just that, because everyone's utilizing it now. It's not. It doesn't differentiate you anymore. It is just that tool. And I think, to your point, I think that is, I would have never, well, literally a year ago, I didn't know how to do Zoom. I had to, so, and now I'm well practiced at using Zoom and setting up meetings and doing that and presenting that way. Um, but I would, I would hands down, I would rather be physically in person
Correct.
than looking at a screen. Do I appreciate it's a good tool to use, as the medium right now, absolutely I appreciate it. But I would much rather be in person, having that conversation, regardless if it was like this or with family members or in other aspects of interacting with people.
So now that I have you here with me, I'm just going to flip this
Yeah,
script here a little bit.
yeah.
So, give me some things that I can do if I'm suffering with depression during the season. Not massive depression from loss of life, because that's a whole different thing. But suffering from seasonal affect disorder. I'm a little down. I got the blues. It's going to be snowing here for the next 3 months. We're all going to be in great cloudy skies. What a wonderful picture I'm painting. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, but uh, give me some tips that I can do to help my psyche out during this time period.
Well, there's a couple different things, and the idea, number one, the idea behind seasonal affect disorder has a lot to do with how the body responds with less sunlight
Mhm.
than other times of the year, right? And so you don't hear about seasonal affect disorder with people that live closer to the equator, right? So or the southern part of the United States. So true seasonal affect disorder is really about sunlight. And what does sunlight do? Well, it does a lot of things for us, but vitamin D in particular is one of those things. So we can choose to supplement vitamin D in through a supplement through a supplement. The best way to get vitamin D is sunlight, um, but during where we live, a vitamin D supplement uh, can aid in that. The other thing that I think is real important is making sure that we are in control of our schedule and not letting uh, outside circumstances control our schedule. Meaning, if if normally I take a walk, during warmer time periods, then what I'm going to encourage, invest in winter clothing and still take that walk. So structure your day, structure it so that you are still, well, one, structure your day anyways, because then you're controlling your day versus the day controlling you. And the second part of that is getting outside. Now, true, you're gonna have to prepare a little bit more. It's gonna, to bundle up and do all those things because you want your experience outside not to be bitter or uncomfortable. But what I've realized when I started learning to do that and stopped kicking snowdrift because it got cold, which it does every year,
Mhm.
I started observing things in the winter and in the silence when I'm outside, in the cold of the winter months, observe things that I normally wouldn't observe if it was July or June, and just being able to appreciate that piece of it. Some of it is, there's definitely a chemical piece that we can work on. Make sure that you're, being aware of what you're putting in your body. um, Hydration, water, and good clean food, whole food, and limiting the processed foods and the simple sugars and the high fat foods, because that's going to affect our mood going up and down. So some of those things, and making sure that we're exercising. Now, we could do all those things and still be impacted by SAD or seasonal affect disorder. Absolutely. But it's really about how do we minimize the impact of that. Um, supplementation, getting outside. Some people use who have more severe SAD. They will get uh, light, light
UV light, yeah.
treatments. Yep, and has been known to help individuals as well. Um, but the reality is that with any of these things, these are all what we refer to as alternative therapies, and they are going to have a more gradual impact um, than a medication or something. And so it's really about disciplining and consistency to those things to have long lasting effects.
So not succumbing to the fact that you're a victim because it's cloudy and it's dark and your world has changed because of the circumstances, is you take the lead, you take control of your life. You still do what you want to do. You just have to prepare better for it. And then you don't feel so confined, so dark, so gloomy, so miserable because you're making those steps for you to make yourself happy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Steve, I had a situation. This was a long time ago, and this would be when I was in my early 20s, and I would go on, vacation or journeys. Um, typically back then, I'd go out to South Dakota, out to the Black Hills and the Badlands area, and these would be solo trips. I can't even make this up, but
You were a
every
wanderer. You
I
were
was,
a wanderer.
I was, and as they would say, I was trying to find me, but I was wandering out there, and every time that I went out there, inevitably it ended up being rainy and overcast and colder than usual. And this was June, July, and August, based upon which year it was. And every time I went out there, oh, if you would have been here last week, or and this is unseasonable, Kevin. We don't know. This never happens. Blah blah. All those things, right? What I realized, I'm already out there. I still did all the things I was going to do. I still did all the hiking I was going to do, still did all the exploring that I was going to do because I was there. I mean, it wasn't like I was going to be able to drive 12 hours back home and then like rearrange it. I didn't have that kind of vacation time. And so what I realized is that those hikes and that exploring and that spiritual development that I had still happened. And then when I went out there years later, went on another trip, even when Diane and I got engaged out there, it was that overcast. It actually snowed June 3rd of 93 when we were out there. Snowing in June, right? And but it, but we went out there later. I I noticed that when it went out and it was sunny, like it's supposed to be in July out there, um, I noticed that I was almost like looking for the smells that came from the rain. There wasn't as many people on the trails, so I had that solitude that I was looking for. I was almost disappointed that it was now sunny and nice because this had been part of my experience. And so I'm like, okay, how can I bring that back when I'm here in Rockford? When the weather changes or it isn't what I ideally think. And then I started buying warmer winter clothes so I could be outside in the wintertime and in the snow.
There's a lot of times where we do things with the different seasons, and mainly that's why a lot of us stay here in the Midwest is because of the season change, is
Yep.
because we get to experience different things, such as when it snows and everybody sees all the tree limbs and all the Christmas trees flocked with the new fallen snow. It's gorgeous. It's beautiful. You don't get to see that in California or Florida. That's one of the benefits. So that's why we appreciate that so much the first time we see it. By
Yep.
about the 18th time, we're bored of it and we want it to be sunny again. But
Yep.
the whole point of why we live in the Midwest is for those changes.
Yep.
And if we embrace those changes instead of being so gloom about that change, I think maybe we would all have a better mental health about the changes.
Yeah, absolutely. And then as we plan our day and plan our week, as you were saying earlier, that we then can be in control of it, in control of at least that aspect. And so having something to look forward to, even if it's not what we would have done a year ago at this
Mhm.
time,
Mhm.
but it's still something that we can look forward to because that seems to be really important for us as humans to have something to look forward to, especially in America. We work hard so that we can then look forward to that thing where we can either celebrate or relax or whatever that is. And we need to sometimes work harder at building that in when other things are um, saying that we can't, because of restrictions or whatever it may be.
Right.
One of the things I want to just kind of uh, also touch on is you were talking earlier. I know we're bouncing back to the changes or grieving.
Sure.
um, one of the things that we're seeing as counselors is that uh, having these polarized views on safety around COVID, or other things that have happened in 2020, and and a lot of that is generated by fear. The fear of something happening, or the fear of, well, if I give in to this restriction, then I'm going to be I'm just going to be a puppet in all this. Or in there, on both ends of those extremes, it seems to be driven by this fear, fear of getting the virus, or the fear of giving up some level of control in my life, or whatever it may be. And this has been impacting couples, impacting families, impacting friends. This polarization of it. And I guess my invitation, with when I'm working with clients that way, and to anybody that may be listening, is I'm fairly confident, hopefully it'll be 21, that the restrictions are going to be lessened. The virus in itself is going to be more contained. There's a hopefully a good possibility that by this time next year, we'll be minimally at level 4, if not level 5, or phase 4, if not phase 5. How we're doing this holiday season, not only in our own personal within us, but then how we're choices that we make with our family and with our friends, respecting where they're at, wherever they're at with it. Um, we need to keep that in mind, because 21 will happen, 22 will happen, um, but the story that we're going to be telling then is the story we're writing right now. I'd rather make a better choice today than have to say I'm sorry um, sometime in the future.
Well, I think as a country, even as humans, we've always had a difference of opinions. We've always had different viewpoints. When was it all of a sudden changed where we all had to be 100% in compliance with everything?
Yeah,
I think that's what makes this country so great. I think that's what makes us as humans so good, is we have different thoughts and different viewpoints. And if we keep our minds open to change, open to the technology that we talked about, open to the control and letting go of some of that control sometimes, I think we all can learn at the same time, and we all make ourselves better people.
yeah, absolutely. So let me ask you this question, because this
Sure.
is one of the questions I ask when I do presentations. So, Steve, for you, in the last 9 months, what has Steve learned about Steve that he wouldn't have learned if COVID-19 wouldn't have happened?
I had a very busy schedule, and work always comes first in my world and pre-COVID world. Um, I had to do this, had to be there, had to do this, had to host this event. Never said no. I
Mm.
never said no. I think because of COVID-19, having these past few months to be at home on weekends, spend more time with my family, do some of the chores, I guess you would say, or things that I wanted to do around the house, I did freely on my own time frame. I'm blessed. I still have a job. I get that. But at the same time, it gave me a chance to breathe a little bit, appreciate the family more than I probably was taking for granted, and I never knew it. Um, and just being able to come in and do my job every day now with a sense of, wow, guess what I get to do today? I get to be on the radio. I get to do something that I have a passion for and I love. And I guess appreciation would be more, because if I wouldn't have had COVID-19, I probably wouldn't have got that pause to do some inventory and do some soul searching and see what's great and what's right for me. So I've appreciated the time because it gave me a chance to appreciate my family more.
Yeah. I hope that that when as this time period is really that because of the pause, we've had to do things differently. Maybe some time to reflect on, hopefully reflect on it, start practicing doing it a different way. As we go into that new normal or that reorder, like you said, we need to, how do I implement that and not uh, buy into always having to always that sense of urgency all the time, because I very much resemble that. I I very I I recognize that I have to work at saying no so I can say yes to the right things. And that's not an easy thing for me to do, because somehow I think I have more capacity than probably I do. But COVID's uh, for example, I haven't been back to the gym since March, and I've converted a space in my basement to work out. And now that, not at the moment, but I'm looking at, do I really want to do that? Do I want to go back to the gym, or can I save that commute time and just you know add add some more equipment into just at my house. Um, I don't know if I'll do that, but it's for the first time in 40 years that I've actually even contemplated it. So I think that's one of the things, not just here at this holiday season right now, but then overall with this whole experience, you know, I just encourage people to ask that question so that we can at least be thinking about what opportunities come in the midst of all this chaos.
Well, I give you credit for working out. I'm at that point where do I want to work out or not? I'm not even into the gym facet yet. So,
Well, Steve, I so appreciate you coming on the show. I appreciate, a few weeks ago when I was able to be on your show, and again, this is not by any means, we know that there has been significant losses of life,
absolutely.
of health. Um, Obviously, our normalcy has been interrupted and challenged. Um, but it's really about trying to, as you've shared, what can we learn during this time period, and what things do we have control over, meaning our actions and our thoughts in the midst of all these things we don't have control over. And I think you gave some great examples in your own personal life, and I hope you have a great and Merry Christmas, and plan for a new year. As we wrap up, if there's anything you would want to give to the listeners.
Sure. The journey, if you're just watching this for the first time, just hearing about it for the first time, as I am, does this air every month? Where do you play this at? Where do we find this at? Or what other topics do you discuss?
Yeah. So the journey has been. I started it 2 years ago, November of 18. This will be the 103rd episode of me having a conversation with someone, and the journey is based on Joseph Campbell's work, The Hero's Journey, and it's a template of life that we all go through. Some of us are conscious, and some of us are unconscious about that journey of going from normal or order into disorder, or some people refer to the dark night of the soul, into reorder or returning home. And this idea of some individuals who come onto the show, they have talked about topics as we did today, or they've gotten more into their own story of how they failed forward, how they've had setbacks, either because the lady who was on last week, or 2 weeks ago, Laura, born in Mexico City, immigrated here from Mexico City, and she talked about her journey of coming here and not speaking English, and struggling with poverty and all those types of things, and uh, now she works for Rockford School District, and she's in the grant writing area and does an after school program with students whose second language is English. And so it's those types of stories of mental health, someone who's recovered from addiction, or suicide attempts, or lost a member from suicide. Those setbacks is one part of the story, but more importantly, what did they learn along the journey about themselves, and now how are they living life because of it?
Wow.
And so those are the majority of the stories, and then other times we bring on topics like we did today, and just kind of do a little bit longer format of doing a deeper dive of what can we do in the midst of a collective setback.
Wow. Well, I'm honored to be on the show because sometimes some of the biggest struggles I have is, am I going to shave today or am I not going to shave today? Do I look good this way or do I not look good this
Yeah.
way? So to be a part of, maybe if anybody got anything out of the show, I'm grateful. And I believe in one of the verses that my pastor told me many times ago. The Lord gives you gifts, and sometimes you have to use those gifts, and you don't even know when you're using them. And if you don't use them, then that's a crime because He
Yeah.
gave you that gift to utilize for a reason. And maybe mine is the gift of talk, and maybe mine's the gift of connecting. And if we connected with you today on any topics, talk to Kevin. He's a good guy. Maybe he can help you out. And then my job was done here today. So.
Perfect, Steve. And just so for the listeners, that I know sometimes people will find it on wherever they find their podcast, on iTunes or Google Play, but you can also find it on kevinpolky.com. and then also on YouTube, just under Kevin Polky, The Journey. And so all the episodes are there, and you can go back and look at different guests that were on. And there's been some pretty cool stories that have been on. I enjoy getting to meet people and get enjoy and getting to know you a little bit better. So thank you again for being on the journey. And
Anytime. You have any questions you want to talk, just reach out. I'm right here.
sounds great. Okay, Steve, thank you very much. And you and your family have a great Christmas and great New Year.
Here, here. You too. Thank you so much.
Thank you.